All right, gradients. I don't think we got too much into gradients in Illustrator. They're a little bit easier to work with in Illustrator again, but you always have this default gradient, and it's the black to white, as you can see here. And you have a gradient tool, which means you can change the direction of the gradient, and you can go off the selected shadow shape. So if you didn't want it to go straight to white and you wanted that to be have a little bit of color, you can just play around with that. I'm just clicking and dragging. And here you can reverse it. You can change the angle manually, so it could be 90 degrees, and you hit enter and it'll do it for you. You can do a radial, and again, you can just have this off the shape. You can have it within the shape. So you only have these two choices. You have many more choices in Illustrator. And you can see here's the colors, and they work like the Photoshop little bars that the one assignment where you had to drag the little, they look like little pencils to match the colors. They kind of work the same way. This is the center point, so if you wanted more white and less of a fade, you can change that. And so the center point, that's what this location is I have this selected, so it's going to be at 50. This one is at 92. Let's do like 45. So that center point will always be between these if that's what you select, that percentage. So let's say you want, and I just clicked on it and more little pencils show up, and I'm clicking and pulling it off to get rid of them. You need at least two. So in this case, it's this color. You can also click and drag a color this way, and you can pull this off. You can change the color this way. There's all different ways to do your gradient. They're nice when, now if you have something dark, remember if you have text on top, it needs to be white, especially when you've got a busy background like a gradient, especially if you got these wild, these are, complementary colors. That would just make it so much harder to read. Like if you did like a blue or something, you typed something and made it, cyan. You can see how it's not great. It kind of hurts your eyes. Let me increase that. So you're better off just keeping it to just plain white, and it's a little classier look, and you're not gonna, you don't need to push the edges of anything. You're not gonna end up being designers in most cases. So, just keep it simple, and you'll have a much more readable product when you're done. So those are some different, there's a link to some more information about creating gradients. Now you can keep these. Okay, this you can click and drag. You can add it. You can add it if it's selected. Let's add another gradient. Do something else, and there we go. And you can't drag it quite like that. Let's see. And you can just add a plus, and then you could put background gradient or whatever name you'd like to name it, and you can modify it from your swatches as well. So just click around. Usually you can figure it out. Now that you've gotten a lot of exposure with Photoshop and Illustrator, some of these will be comfortable for you. All right, so that's how you can save these gradients. And I showed you all of that. Now we're going to talk about, I'm just getting rid of all this, and we're going to talk about some text. So we're going to do a poster. You can use, placeholder text. So we're going to type fill with placeholder text, and it'll fill it to the size of your box. So if you want a little bit larger box than you think you'll need, and then you can just delete your placeholder text later once you decide how it's going to look. So let me just, pick a different font. Don't use, Sabon's great. And this is managing the type. So we can go up here, or we can go to type tools and types and tables under tools, and you can have the palette separate, and they're usually, these go together. So just like the color, where you can manage the color with your swatches, you know, these two usually should be together, where you can work with the colors individually and then have your big swatch list. The paragraph and the character, and they look exactly like they do in Illustrator. And as I said before, do not do a hard return between paragraphs like that. It's too big of a space, especially if you start playing with your leading. What you would do, I'm going to do a select all. So edit, select all. I'm selecting all the type, or you can just click and drag, whatever you're comfortable with. And you can change the font. You can, anytime you see this, always change it. Even if it's this, you can see the leading. It's nice when it's all selected. You can really see the space between the lines show how much you're adding. You can kern it out. So let's say this is the headline or subhead, paragraph heading type phrase. And I'm going to bold it and see it's the same information. You can see it's changing at the top here as I do it. Now, if I did an effect on the text and I click this drop shadow button, it would do everything in that text box. So you don't want to do that. You can unclick that. But you can make this all caps. You can make this spread out, and you can even type more in, like 500 if you wanted. I would definitely do all caps. You can make this taller or thinner. Generally don't do this unless you really have a reason to make it modified from the way it was created. You don't want to alter that unless it just won't fit or something like that. You can always go back to 100 this way or type it in. And if you needed like let's say something for you want this to be superscript or subscript, you can do that. Paragraph wise, you would want to select your paragraphs and add your space after. I think I talked about that. So now you have control over the space between the paragraphs, and it's not going to be just you can do a lot if you need to, or you can just do a little bit less than a hard return. And anything you do to these would go from hard return to hard return. So if I show you the hidden characters, you can see, let me get closer here, that this is a hard return. That's just hitting enter, hitting return. I want to, if I hit return in the middle of the paragraph, it gives it that space after. So the space after applies to this symbol here. If I just want this to be kicked down, I do a shift return and get rid of hyphenated words. We talked about that a little bit, and I'm doing shift return. So the paragraph stays together. You can still have what you want on each line without it adding whatever effect you have used. So you can do a left, you can do indents, you can do initial caps, which sometimes is nice for like the beginning of a book or something. So if I did this here, this is the small caps, and I start adding, okay, so it's 3 lines. Let me do it on this one. So it's 3 lines of text, 2 lines, 3 lines, and I can use a whole word or just the first word. The first whole line, maybe it's just 2 and it's the whole line. You would just keep adding. So that makes a nice effect, and you can color it. You can make it italic. You can, do all kinds of stuff within these. So if you wanted an effect, you would have to take it out of, so I'm going to copy, create a new box, and paste that in. Now I can add some effects. All right. So if I go to properties and I add my effects, my drop shadow, dial that in 20. Oop. So you just have to play around with this and do some interesting things. Remember, we're trying to help with readability. So this drop cap helps with the start of a story. So it gives a place for the reader their eye to go. But you can see now the headline is kind of buried because this X is so huge. So, I'd probably get rid of, I'm just clicking here and deleting, and that'll get rid of the soft returns. So you do have to be careful with, too much effects might detract from your message, and it might detract from what is important information on your page. And then kerning is in between each letter. So if you wanted extra space, let's say between these words, you would go to your character. Oh, that's styles. That's styles. Where? Oh, here it is. You can do between letters. So you can see I'm dialing that in. If this is too tight, like you have kind of a weird font and they're too close, you can do that. Or if you need it tighter, you can go negative. And they, maybe you need it to touch for some reason. You're doing some kind of stylistic thing. So keep that in mind. And then there's some tips. So you can read through that. And so you can add gradient to fonts. Here, let's add a gradient swatch, and you can see that it does apply it to the letters, not individual letters, the whole line. So keep that in mind. So for the lab, you're going to create a flyer, use at least one colored box with a gradient. It can be anything you'd like. 8.5 by 11, a headline, subhead, one paragraph of text. That's 3 to 5 sentences or more. That's up to you. Add a contact such as website, email, phone, QR, or all of the above. Include 2 graphics or images. So not just, anything in InDesign is going to be, in general, a mix of color, fonts, and text, and graphics and images. So, you can do a background, don't do just white, but don't count the colored box as a graphic. It's got to be an actual graphic. So do a little research, and then add a gradient to the text as well on your headline. And that is the lab 4.